Welcome to Foresight TV, where we provide leadership food for the soul, helping senior living organizations have higher occupancy, lower turnover, and better cultures. Today's episode is made possible through the generous support of Connected Living, a technology company that helps senior living communities effectively communicate with residents, families, and team members. Here's today's show. Hey guys, I am so excited about this show today. We've had a lot of interest as we've been talking about this episode of Foresight TV. I've got my longtime friend Wendy Carrel, and she probably knows more about senior living in Mexico, certainly than anybody I know. Now, I want to start by saying that you're probably going to see her picture fade in and out, and there may be some quality. She's in a small town in Mexico, and she'll talk a little bit more about where it is. But the internet is not quite what we would necessarily be used to here in the U.S., although sometimes ours here isn't so great either. So, Wendy, let's actually start talking a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Oh, thank you, Steve. Thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to greet you and your audience, and congratulations on your 10 plus years. We appreciate all you're doing. So I'm originally from Palo Alto, California. I grew up in a medical family. I have a lot of experience as a caregiver from childhood, and I'm the founder of Wellness Shepherd. SHEPHERD. It's a service offering senior housing options and senior care options for Americans, Canadians, and Europeans who are interested in Mexico. So I offer. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead and talk a little bit more about what you do.
Okay, I shall. Well, just backtrack. Remember 2008? A lot of things started changing as they have started continuing. They are continuing to change now. And the writing was on the wall when I was working in senior care in the Coachella Valley. And I could see that a number of people could not afford care. And because of my languages, and because I've been in and out of Mexico since childhood, and because I have a lot of relationships here, I thought, okay, let's go explore that and see what the options are. So I spent several years looking at hospitals and senior homes. There are about 800 throughout the country, but I focused only on places where expats live, those who don't speak English in general, who have decided to retire to Mexico and may not realize that the culture they're in is very different from home, so that I can prepare them for surprises and guide them so they will feel safe and comfortable. So I've traveled the country, 16 states, but mostly focused on Jalisco, which is where Guadalajara is the main city, and Lake Chapala, which is 45 minutes south of the airport of Guadalajara, and Puerto Vallarta, and San Miguel Allende, and Mérida, and several other places where they're expats. But these cities are where most of them are living now.
So let's actually talk a little bit more. So Lake Chapala is, let's contrast, let's talk about how far south from the US border, and what is it south from?
Okay, so Lake Chapala is the largest freshwater lake in Mexico, and it's home full-time to over 20,000 expats. Now, there's several people who will dispute these numbers, but more or less that. But in the high season, which is now, there are snowbirds from the US and Canada in particular who come here 6 months out of the year and then go home. So, and that And in general, there are 1.5 million Americans in Mexico. That would include young people working, people who have jobs with corporations, for example, and a lot of digital nomads who can work from wherever they are. And that's a whole new phenomena that's been happening, I would say, the last 3 years here. I see a lot of 50-somethings, 40-somethings coming down with families. So anyway, the reason people choose Jalisco is that the airport is an international airport. It's 45 minutes from the lake, and they can fly directly to Europe or the US and Canada.
So, what's the terrain like around Lake Chapala? Is it deserty or something else?
Okay, we are in basically a high desert. It's just under 6,000 feet. So anyone with high blood pressure or challenges at altitudes may have difficulty. So for that reason, a lot of people choose Mazatlan, especially Canadians love Mazatlan the most, and Puerto Vallarta or Mérida. But we are we're in the colonial highlands. And it is a combination of arid landscape. It's very dry. And the weather here, according to National Geographic, is considered the second best in the world.
So what are summertime temperatures there?
Yeah, so it's a direct flight to LA in 3 hours, to San Francisco in 4 hours, to Miami. I don't know because I've not flown to Miami from here, but people really like to be able to use this as a hub. And if they retire and they're very well off, they not only use it for living, they travel from here around the world.
Gotcha. So let's talk a little bit about what senior living is actually like in Mexico. Maybe you can talk about what kinds of options are there. Are there things that are very much like we'd see in a sunrise or a Brookdale, or are they different than that? What's it like?
Okay, that's a great question. All right. First, I'd like to outline really quickly, because it's so different from the US. First, there are government homes. They're founded by DEEF, which is social services. And in these homes, some of which are very nice, there are Americans who are living there because they can pay a small amount to live there. That's a comment for those who are on a budget. A number of homes are run by the Catholic Church and by nuns who are nurses. And you will also still see this in the US and Canada and Europe, but it's most prevalent here. And they have a very democratic model. If you have funds, you have your own room and bath. If you have a modicum of funds, you share a room with 1 to 4 persons. And then what you pay helps pay for the rest, because they're all nonprofit. So those are the models. And here they're called asilos, not my favorite word, asylums. They're also called hogares or residencias. And so assisted living and nursing so far in Mexico is one and the same. There isn't a separate skilled nursing facility. It's all together in one place. Generally speaking, the first places have all been what we would refer to as boarding cares, or mom and pops, 6 bed to 14 beds. And they're in every state of Mexico, some of them extremely well run, and with a lot of heart-centered, mission-oriented people. And as in any country, there are the places you would wish to avoid. So they have a catch-all, assisted living and nursing as the same. Then we have many other things. There are independent living communities all over places where expats are. usually gated. They look like one of them here at the lake, adorable El Parque, looks like Palm Springs. And the same vegetation, the same sweet bungalows, very nice. There are a number of those here on this lake, and a number in other places where expats live. And the idea, of course, is aging in place. And then if something happens, you go to the hospital in Guadalajara, or we now have hospitals at the lake, or you bring in home care, and a number of people do that. And then we have intentional communities, and a plethora of them here at Lake Chapala. We have Rancho La Salud, which is really an upscale, very nice, eco-friendly place. We have two small, tiny home places. One of them is called Namaste Community, which was built by an American from Oregon who is a body, mind, spirit person. We have a new residence for 10 people going up for Buddhists, attracting mostly Americans. It isn't completed yet. And we have one life plan community, which is going to open in April. And it's called La Pueblita. And I wouldn't call it a Brookdale, but because the layout is different. It's a campus that has the memory care at the far west side on 2 floors. And they've already hired a British nurse to be in charge of that. They have bungalows, and they have residences and penthouses. And the idea is that on this campus, the majority, 75% of the residents are independent, with a small portion for assisted living and memory care. Does that give you a bit of an overview? At least what's here at this lake. And in every city, there's a different, it's a little bit different.
So let's talk about money. What does it cost to live in those various levels of care in Mexico?
Okay. Just so everyone, we're democratic, so everyone can hear this. There are people here who've been grandfathered in, living on $600 a month in what I would call a low-income assisted living, and Americans, they're managing just fine. And they're paying, just under what they're earning to live there, and with enough money to go walking somewhere to buy something. But generally speaking, in all of Mexico, they kind of average between $1,500 and $2,000, depending on who the owner is. Here at the lake, we have 2 places at $3,500 a month, which is a standard cost, a low cost in California now. So it's a big range, but the biggest difference is this. I had the pleasure of working at Vista Cove in Rancho Mirage, California, an exemplary Alzheimer's campus. Gorgeous room for sundowners to walk all night, excellent activities. Okay, when I worked there, it was $7,000 a month plus expenses. It's now plus $12,000 a month. And most of the people who find me on the internet are families looking for memory care. I would say the majority are memory care because they can't afford it, and they come from the Midwest, they come from the East Coast, and they come from the West Coast. And here at this lake, between $1,800 and $3,500 a month for memory care.
Wow.
Just to give you some ballpark figures. And things change.
And so are you seeing?
Yeah.
So are you seeing family?
But that's the biggest opportunity now here.
So you're seeing American and Canadian families bring their loved ones down to Lake Chapala and I don't know, leaving them and just coming to visit for dementia care?
Both. It depends the situation. Some people are running businesses, they can't leave, so they have me or someone else visiting. But then there are those who come with their parents and decided to work from here. And this is a whole new trend in the last few years. I see more and more of it because they're not so certain they can afford to live in the U.S.
It sounds like the biggest challenge for working down there, I'm just taking a little side path, maybe the availability of internet service?
Depending where you live. Oh, did you say something else? Okay.
No, I was just talking about internet service.
Okay, Jalisco is the center of technology for all of Mexico. The only reason our internet goes down at the lake is because they are working on electric lines, which has happened 3 times in the last week. But it isn't all that often. And we have high-speed internet. You can find it almost anywhere in Mexico, in every major city. If you're in a rural area, it might be a little more complicated. But in places expats live, expats demand the internet, including 90-year-olds I know, right, that live here.
That's right, yeah. So what if I'm thinking about this, you know, I mean, besides the distance, there are other things that I'm not even sure quite how to ask the question. I guess the first thing is, you talked early on about things being different. And so talk to me a little bit about what those differences are that might surprise me when I know what senior living is like here. And the other part of that is, can I do senior living in Mexico if I don't speak any Spanish?
Okay. Yes. Almost every single home, not every single home, has English speakers. A lot of caregivers are young. They've been learning English in school anyway. Nurses almost always speak English, and most physicians speak English. That's throughout the country in metropolitan areas, and certainly at Lake Chapala. And just so you can get an idea of the economics, according to the Guadalajara Reporter, the expat community brings in, and I hope I got the number right, several $1 million a year to the economy of this lake. So in many ways, they support us, and the expats support the local services. So,
and do I pay in American dollars, or do I have to convert it to pesos?
Yes, everything here is in pesos. If you go to Ecuador, which is another option, it's all in dollars for the moment. So there are lots of differences. The biggest difference is that we are a literary culture. We learn by reading. We look and we read, and then we remember. In general, I'm not talking about everyone. And this is an audio culture. This is a singing culture. If you say something to someone, they're going to remember it. But if you say it to me, I may not remember it until I've written it down, or I'm visualizing it in another way. Okay, so when you, for example, one of the most frustrating things is that, with the exception of a few owners, and this is in every state, when you write them an email, you may not hear back. If you call them, you will hear right away. And most of all, if you have a phone, you have to be using WhatsApp, because everyone is on WhatsApp here. And they expect that you will be on WhatsApp as well. It's just cultural. That's it. Nothing more and nothing less. And it's a lot of fun to, kind of figure it out. The other big challenge is food. the Mexican diet is pretty standard. We've all been, you know what Mexican food is, no matter where you live in the US, even if it's from a different state, you know pretty much what it is. So unless owners have been trained, for example, there's a Canadian man here who owns a small home, and his food is just great. And there's another Canadian couple at the far end of the lake, and their food is known to be fantastic. Well, they're preparing continental meals. Not every place serves continental meals. And as you would in the US or Canada or Europe, you would visit and check out the food first. You would want to know, and they have customized diets. And also, here's another phenomenon. This is new. There are a number of Mexican Americans who have come not only to this lake, but other parts of the country, who speak English, who were trained in California, Arizona, and other states to be professional caregivers. So the standards with them are very high, and you know what they are, and they'll speak to you in English, and they'll serve you what you want. So that's another nice change that's happening around here. So food is a surprise unless you know what it's going to be ahead of time.
So, a couple things. When most of the audience wouldn't likely know this, but Wendy, you do, because we've talked about it. For about 11 or 12 years, I would take high school kids down to Mexico to do building projects. Yes. And we would, there was always, with the organization I was working with, there was sort of a general belief that we needed to take our own food for food safety issues. But when I first started doing it, I did it with somebody who was a Mexican national who lived in the U.S. And so he just, he would work with the local church ladies and make food. And so that's kind of the way I grew up on it. But the diet's narrow, but it's wonderful, wonderful food. But I guess one of the questions is, do people have to worry about safety? It's like, the cleanliness of the food and water, and what about those kinds of things?
It depends. It's just like it is in the U.S. You could get food poisoning anywhere. My read on this, after all these years, is that they cherish having expats as their residents because their families pay. Start with that. And they will do everything to accommodate as best they know how.
Great.
So everything will be there is a home right here. Every time I'm there, they're cleaning the room, a deep clean. They go under the beds, they go everywhere every day. And they're fastidious in their serving of food. And they do try to accommodate. And even now,
so are there
go ahead.
Yeah, so the question I actually want to get to, since we've got about 6 or 7 minutes left, is this: is there an opportunity? Actually, I have two questions for you. Is there an opportunity for Americans and Canadians to come down there and go into the senior living business?
Well, yes, because I've seen them in different states of Mexico, and especially at this lake, and they do it for different reasons. And one of the Canadian couples is, they're Gen Xers, maybe. They're not boomers. And then the next couple, he's actually more than a boomer. But he had a wife who had Alzheimer's, and he had a fabulous nurse he was happy with, and he decided to open up the home for other expats, and that's how that happened. There are different stories, different possibilities. The most important thing, it's better if you speak Spanish. You need to understand nuance. You need to understand where you are and how things can change. And you need to be willing to be very patient. As I mentioned earlier, La Pueblita, which is the only CCRC life plan community in all of Mexico that's going to open in April. The owner is a lovely Mexican physician, actually a pediatrician from Guadalajara, who is, he's a boomer, a young boomer, and he's got parents he's concerned about, and he has 3 children who are helping him. And their plan is to do everything the best they can for everyone. And so it's different. It's, what do you want? Is this your mission, or is it just for money? You know, and people who are mission oriented, as people I've already shared about, tend to be the ones who do really well, because they love it. And one must be flexible. A lot of people here are retired from Aramco. They're physicians, a lot of wonderful nurses. We also have a lot of professors, and you know, these people help support the community, and it's very impressive. And there are opportunities. I think there are opportunities everywhere on the planet, as long as you're happy with the place and you understand that it won't be easy.
Yeah, for me, I think the hardest lesson when I first started going into Mexico was that was the lesson of patience. I remember the first time we were going across the border, and I had about 30 kids I needed to get across the border, and this was all pre 9/11, and so we didn't, you know, we were working with birth certificates, but I remember standing in line for an hour, and there were only like 4 people in front of us. And then they decided to take lunch, and they just closed the window. And
Right.
you know, the lesson of patience for us, for me as a leader, and the kids, that it took us 4 hours for something that we just wouldn't tolerate here in the U.S. It was pretty hard, but once you get used to it, it's actually kind of can be a nice way to, you know, just reorient your life. But that's, like I say, that was probably my biggest lesson in going into Mexico. But so I think what I'm hearing you say,
excellent. That's a very important. Their time is their time. It's not your time. But it all works out. It's just a cultural difference. That's all. You get used to it.
Yep.
So one of the things that I think is really important to mention is that no one knows the future. And down here, you know, no one knows about Social Security. Truthfully, no one knows if it'll be there or not. And Medicare, they're talking about cuts. I don't know. But these are real concerns for everyone, no matter, well, if you're independently wealthy and worth multiple millions, it's fine. It doesn't matter. You can survive anywhere. But if you worked really hard, or you were a boomer who lost a lot in 2008 and have to reinvent yourself or reinvent your life, you may not be able to retire, as you know. There are so many articles about that. And also that I really appreciate how you're talking about all the alternatives that are coming up in the US. You know, the way just that really defined, like the Hindu home, or the home for US postal workers, you know, these enclaves of people who have a lot in common seem to be growing as an idea, certainly here in Mexico, and certainly at this lake.
I would, you know, the one thing I would say is that I've written a couple of stories with Wendy about senior living in Mexico. And I think the last one was perhaps 2 years ago. But what's really fascinating, I think,
here about February.
Okay, so what's really critical about this for you as a reader who are in the senior living is to really understand how significant Mexican senior living is in Mexico and other countries. Is that even though it's old content that we would never see this happen on virtually anything else, it consistently ranks in our top 20 or 30, no, probably our top 10 or 15 organic searches of articles that people read, because because of the cost factor. And so probably it's not a great business opportunity if you're just doing it to make money, but if you have passion, it could be a great last senior living community that you might operate. It could also, and if you've got people who are really struggling, I mean, the idea of being sort of seems strange to send your loved ones to Mexico for dementia care, but if you can't afford a great community here, it could be an option. And interestingly enough, and I'm sure you know this, Wendy, it's actually more common in Europe. And there they send they get a lot of their senior care down in northern coast of Africa, where there's some really good senior law options at much lower cost there. So just part of the ecosystem. Our conversation today tells me when things sort of open up again, I got to come down and write some more stories and do some tours and shoot some video and talk more about
come and visit.
I will do that.
Welcome.
I will do that. So we are about out of time here. One more thing I want to do here. Let me see if I can bring this up. Let me see, where is that? Okay. So we are sort of trying a new thing with creating some text messages communities. So if you're watching this either live or later, we would love to have you be a part of this. We're not going to use this to spam you stuff. So but if you would text the word, just text to this number, 916-659-5287, the word TV, just the two letters, TV, you will immediately get a autoresponder back that asks you for a little more information, so we'll actually know who belongs to that number. And then maybe we don't even know exactly, we're going to be asking you about it, but what we probably do is like once a week, maybe just before we start, we'll send you a little text reminder that we're about to go live. And we'll do some fun stuff. So we'll give away some books and some extra stuff that you won't get unless you're part of the community. So we would love to have you come join this. And Wendy, any last words? Anything I should ask you that I haven't?
Well, aren't you sweet? Just something off the wall. Everyone who's listening, if you don't know Mexico or anywhere outside the U.S., unless you have TRICARE, which is medical insurance for people who are in the service, Medicare, you cannot use it here, period. You know, just for those who think that it's applicable. And a lot of people come here and fly home to use their Medicare, and they don't give it up.
So if I don't have Medicare, how do I access healthcare, and is it expensive? That's actually a worthwhile question to ask before we stop.
That's a whole hour, but quickly, in 30 seconds. Most people pay out of pocket for healthcare. Some people buy catastrophic insurance in case something happens that obviously you don't know about, even if you're in fine shape. And some people have exit insurance so they can be helicoptered or flown home in an air ambulance, and they can use their Medicare. But they have plans here. They have medical plans. They have public medical plans, which you are entitled to if you have residency. And so a lot of people come to Mexico just for health care. So, I'm
really glad
it's
you
happening
mentioned that.
everywhere.
Yeah, I would say that the other thing is, of course, the cost equation is much, much different. It's been more than 10 years, but when I was kids to Mexico, we had a young lady who had hit a rock with a hammer or something and got a foreign object embedded in her eye. And so we had to drive her 45 minutes to the hospital to an ophthalmologist, and he, had to anesthetize her and pull the thing out. And we actually did have overseas surgery. I mean, it's overseas insurance through our organization if we needed it, but it was $50, and so we just paid it. And I guess the one other thing I do want to say is that the quality of medical care, they may have some of the sophisticated equipment, but the doctors and nurses are really good in Mexico. So
it's like it is at home. You must know how to discriminate. You must know how to screen. You must have, you need to understand who you're going to. It's the same everywhere. And I've lived and traveled and been in hospitals, not that many hospitals, in 42 countries. And I really, whether it's Germany or Kuwait, it's, there's great medical care everywhere. You just have to know where to find it and be very lucky.
That's right.
It's true.
Great. Well, Wendy, thank you very much. Great conversation. Why don't you, I'm going to end the broadcast and you can stay on for just a minute. So thank you for watching this. I hope it was informative and helpful. And you should look forward to sometime maybe in the next 6 or 8 or 12 months, depending on what happens with the pandemic, me going to Mexico and talking more about this, because I think it's a great opportunity. If it weren't for my grandkids and grandkids, I would love to live down there. So that sort of becomes a challenge, but who knows? Thank you very much.